You know that feeling, right? That fluttery thing in your stomach before something big, like a presentation or maybe a tricky conversation. Those butterflies,
Mhm.
they feel so automatic.
Mm.
Well, what if that feeling isn't just, random? What if it's actually a sign, a direct line between your gut and your brain?
That's exactly it. And that connection, that's what we're really digging into today, the gut-brain axis. It's surprisingly massive in how it shapes our mood, how we experience anxiety.
Exactly. So this gut-brain axis,
Yeah.
okay, what are the nuts and bolts? How does it actually work?
Well, think of it less like a one-way message
Yeah.
and more like a super busy highway. Constant traffic both ways.
Yeah.
Your gut and brain are basically in constant contact.
Yeah, yeah.
Your gut's always sending these updates like status reports to the brain.
Mm.
And the brain, it's firing back instructions, making adjustments.
And it's not just about digestion, is it?
Oh, far from it. I mean, yes, the gut monitors its own functions, obviously.
Yeah.
But the really amazing part is how it connects the emotional centers, the thinking parts of your brain, directly with what's happening down in your intestines.
Which is why this is, well, probably super relevant for anyone listening. If you've ever had those mood swings that seem to come out of nowhere or waves of anxiety, understanding this link, it could actually offer some real insights, couldn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And for this deep dive, we've pulled together some really interesting material. We're looking at educational research notes focused right on this axis, plus some cutting-edge stuff from microbiome research,
Microbiome.
and
Good.
even touching on personalized nutrition. It all ties together.
Right. Okay, so this term keeps popping up, the second brain. Why do people call the gut that? It sounds a little dramatic.
It does sound a bit like hyperbole, maybe.
Yeah.
But there's solid reasoning there. Your gut has this incredibly complex web of neurons.
Yeah.
Seriously, more neurons than your entire spinal cord.
What?
So it has a lot of autonomy. And its influence goes way beyond just, breaking down your lunch. It's constantly analyzing the nutrients coming in.
Analyzing them.
Yeah, think of it less like just a processor and more like a data center. It's feeding vital info back to the brain about your internal state, affects energy, focus, everything. So maybe less second brain and more like a co-pilot.
A co-pilot for my whole body. I like that.
Exactly. And this data stream doesn't just stop at the brain. It triggers responses elsewhere. Kidneys, muscles, even your heart and blood vessels. It's pretty significant for just a second brain.
Okay, wow. So how do they actually talk, these two brains? It's not like they're texting. What are the mechanisms?
Right. Good question. It comes down to these things called neuroimmunoendocrine mediators.
Oh, okay. Break that down.
Sure. Think of them as different languages. Neuro is nerve signals, direct connections. Immuno uses immune cell messengers. And endocrine is hormones. Hormones are a really big part of it.
Like cortisol, stress hormone.
Exactly like cortisol. Your brain releases it via the hypothalamus when you're stressed, right? Well, that cortisol signal travels through both the nerve pathways and the hormone pathways.
So my stress isn't just in my head, it's actually changing things in my gut, physically.
Precisely. It allows the brain to directly influence gut function, how fast things move, how leaky the lining might be. But here's the twist. It goes the other way, too.
How so?
Those brain signals, they also affect the trillions of microbes living in your gut microbiota.
Wait, so my stress could actually be, like, messing with my gut bugs?
That's what the science suggests, yeah. And it's not just stress hormones from the brain. Think about digestive hormones, too. Insulin, leptin, GLP-1. They're released by your gut, your pancreas, even fat tissue. They do way more than just manage digestion. They influence feeling full, eating behavior, how your body uses energy overall. They're key players in this whole axis communication.
And I think I saw something in the notes that there's a specific angle for women with these hormones.
Yes, absolutely. That's a really important point. These metabolic hormones, especially leptin and insulin, have this kind of reciprocal relationship with estrogen in biological females.
They influence each other.
They do.
Yeah.
And what's really relevant is when reproductive hormone levels are out of balance, like in PCOS, polycystic ovary syndrome, it's often linked with digestive problems. So for some listeners, that connection between reproductive health and gut health might really resonate.
That's really good to know. Okay, so brain influences gut. Got it. Let's flip it again. What's the latest on how the gut, especially the microbes, influences the brain? Mood, anxiety.
Yeah, this is where things get really exciting. It's a super active area of research. But we're seeing more and more evidence that the gut microbiota, that whole ecosystem inside you, plays a pretty big role in things like anxiety behaviors, maybe even depressive symptoms.
Really?
And there are growing links between disruptions in this axis often involving shifts in the microbe community, what we call dysbiosis.
Dysbiosis,
Yep.
imbalance, right.
Exactly, an imbalance, like too many bad tenants, not enough good ones. So links between that dysbiosis and conditions like autism and definitely common gut issues like IBS, irritable bowel syndrome.
So the actual mix of bacteria could be affecting my mood. It still sounds a bit sci-fi.
It does a little.
Yeah.
But look at the studies on germ-free animals, GF animals.
Germ-free, like no bacteria at all.
None. Raised totally sterile. And what researchers find is if they introduce specific microbes into these GF animals, it can actually normalize how they respond to stress.
Wow.
But, and this is key, it works best during a specific window early in life.
Ah, so there's like a critical period.
Seems that way. It suggests that getting the right microbes early on is really important for setting up how our brain develops and how we handle stress later in life. It really highlights the long-term impact of those early gut bugs.
That's wild. I also saw a note about some government research on transgenic mice, and there was some confusion. What was that about?
Ah, yes. That's a great example of how basic science, even if it sounds weird, can be really important down the line.
Yeah.
Okay.
There was some misunderstanding. People thought it was transgender mice, but it was transgenic, meaning mice bred with specific gene changes to study certain things.
Gotcha. Different thing entirely.
Right. But the point is, even if the research sounds really niche, studying these tiny mechanisms of the gut-brain link gives us huge insights into health and disease long term. It shows why we need that fundamental science, even if the payoff isn't immediate.
Yeah, puts it in perspective. Okay, so back to the microbes.
Yeah.
How do these tiny things actually influence something as complicated as the brain?
Well, one major way seems to be through serotonin, the serotonergic system.
Serotonin, the mood chemical.
Kind of, yeah. It does regulate mood, but also sleep, appetite, lots of things. And studies, again, with those GF animals, show that having gut microbes dramatically changes how serotonin is made, used, broken down the turnover.
Uh-huh.
And it changes levels of serotonin-related stuff in the limbic system, the brain's emotion center. So it strongly suggests the gut is crucial for keeping serotonin balanced in the brain. That's amazing. I always thought serotonin was just a brain thing.
Well, it's a bit more complex. A huge amount of the body's serotonin is made in the gut, like 90% or something.
80%.
Yeah, but serotonin works differently outside the brain and spinal cord, the peripheral system, compared to inside the central nervous system. How gut serotonin exactly talks to the brain and affects mood, that's still being actively researched. Lots more to learn there.
Okay. So gut influences brain. Clear on that now. Let's spin it back one more time. How does the brain mess with the gut environment and the microbes living there?
Right. Just like the gut signals up, the brain is constantly signaling down. It uses a whole range of molecules secreted by neurons, nerve cells, also immune cells in the gut lining, and these special cells called enterochromaffin cells.
Entero. What now?
Enterochromaffin cells. They're actually major serotonin producers in the gut.
Okay. So my stress levels, my mental state, that could be changing the actual habitat for my gut bacteria.
That's the idea. These signals from the brain can directly tweak microbehavior. And get this, some bacteria actually have receptors for our neurotransmitters.
No way. Like they can hear our brain signals.
Kind of. A classic example is E. coli. It has receptors for epinephrine and norepinephrine adrenaline and noradrenaline, your stress hormones. When the host, us, is stressed, these receptors can get blocked, changing how the E. coli behaves.
It's like they're eavesdropping on our stress levels.
In a manner of speaking, yeah. And beyond talking to the microbes directly, the brain is also the master regulator for basic gut functions.
Like what?
Like gut motility, how fast food moves through, secretion of acid, bicarbonate, mucus, how fluids are managed in the intestines, even the immune response right there in the gut lining.
Wow. All of that sounds pretty essential for a healthy gut.
Totally essential. They maintain that protective mucus layer, the biofilm, where all the different bacteria live. It creates all these little microhabitats. So if that brain-to-gut communication gets messed up...
And then the bacteria's home gets disturbed.
Exactly. It disrupts their normal environment, their access to food. It can really negatively impact the whole microbial community.
This connection is just layer upon layer. So, okay, practical stuff. What does this mean for treating actual health problems?
Well, understanding this link, the enteric nervous system in the gut, talking to the central nervous system in the head, it helps explain why some treatments for things like IBS actually work.
Like which ones?
Think about antidepressants, mind-body therapies, CBT cognitive behavioral therapy, even medical hypnotherapy.
Antidepressants for gut problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, that always seemed weird to me.
Right. But if you think about the two brains talking, it clicks. If you help one, you can help the other. So when a gastroenterologist prescribes certain antidepressants for IBS,
Yeah.
it's not always just because they think it's all in your head. Those drugs can actually calm down hyperactive nerve cells in the gut, reducing pain or altered motility.
Ah, okay, that makes way more sense. And things like CBT, psychological therapies.
That can be super helpful too. They work on improving the communication between the brain and gut by managing stress or anxiety signals coming from the brain.
You calm things down in the gut?
You can influence gut function indirectly, yeah.
Yeah.
Improve symptoms, quality of life. It's really holistic.
Okay. Holistic. That brings us to something we all deal with, diet. How does food fit into this whole gut-brain picture?
Oh, diet is absolutely fundamental, huge. We're seeing tons of research now showing real benefits of dietary changes for mental well-being. For example, several studies link adopting a Mediterranean-style diet with reduced depression symptoms.
Interesting. So it's not just good for the heart, it's good for the head, too.
Seems like it.
Hmm.
It probably reflects how improving your diet just boosts overall body function, which then positively affects mental health, especially relevant for conditions that often show up alongside mental health issues.
Makes sense.
And remember, getting beneficial microbes doesn't have to mean popping expensive pills. Fermented foods are great. Yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi. They can all help your microbiota.
So eating more sauerkraut could genuinely have a ripple effect on my mood.
It contributes to a healthier gut environment, definitely. And as we've seen, a healthier gut can mean a happier brain. We're also realizing that this thing called microbial extinction,
Sounds dramatic.
it just means losing diversity in our gut bugs. And it seems partly linked to modern diets. Lots of processed stuff, fried foods, not enough fiber from plants.
Right, if you don't feed the good guys.
They don't thrive. Exactly. And what's really telling is when you look at different diets linked to better mental health, there's a common thread.
Which is?
High in plant foods, fruits, veggies, whole grains, and low in ultra-processed foods. It seems like the overall pattern might be more important than obsessing over single nutrients.
The whole symphony, not just one instrument.
Good analogy.
Yeah. Plus, if your gut microbiota is out of whack or less productive, it can produce metabolites byproducts that actually cause inflammation in the gut.
Inflammation. That sounds bad. It can be. Chronic low-grade inflammation can damage the gut lining cells, the enterocytes, and even mess with absorbing micronutrients.
Mm-hmm.
Iron is a big one. So poor gut health from diet could even lead to deficiencies that make mood and energy worse.
It really is all connected. Okay, we mentioned IBS before. Can we circle back to that? How does the gut-brain axis specifically play into IBS and other GI issues?
Yeah, the evidence is definitely stacking up. Changes in the microbiome, glitches in that gut-brain communication,
Mm-hmm.
they seem to be major factors in many IBS symptoms.
Uh-huh.
And, the low FODMAT diet, restricting certain carbs,
Yeah, I've heard of it.
it can help some people with IBS symptoms short term, definitely. But it's generally not seen as a forever solution.
More like a temporary fix.
It's kind of the current thinking.
Hmm.
And while a lot of the early work was in rodents, we're getting more and more solid human evidence now. It supports a real causal link between gut dysbiosis, diet habits, and a bunch of human diseases that are still pretty tough to treat.
That sounds hopeful, though, for future treatments.
It is hopeful. There's huge interest in developing specific microbe-targeted therapies, but it's complicated. Given the complexity and the limits of just changing diet, we'll probably need a more integrated approach to really make headway.
This has been, wow, a really fascinating deep dive. So wrapping up, what's the single biggest takeaway for listeners?
I think the crucial thing is just recognizing this profound two-way street. Your gut influences your brain. Your brain influences your gut. Especially when it comes to mood and anxiety. It's not just metaphor, it's real physiology.
Right. So taking time of my gut health could actually be a way to proactively support my mental health.
Absolutely. It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah.
About the implications for our own well-being, our own strategies for feeling good.
Definitely given me a lot to chew on, no pun intended. And that leads us to our final thought for you, our listener. Given this incredibly complex back and forth relationship between gut and brain, what else? What other parts of our health that seem totally unrelated beyond mood and anxiety might actually be deeply connected to our gut microbes in this axis? Makes you wonder what other hidden connections are waiting to be discovered inside us, doesn't it?